Tim, I want to get back to a kind of previous point here, which is you had two decisions that appear to be blessed from on high. The first one was the decision to license to Microsoft, and I realize that that was just one of many customers, but it was a good decision. And the second was when to sell. Was that just luck? Was there something more planned behind it?
When to sell is in the acquisition of a public company where if your price is out there and they're willing to pay it, the decision process is not that that complex. So the decision to license to Microsoft. A lot of different, and I end up, when I'm talking to people trying to do entrepreneurial companies and so on, one of the most common conversations is about channel. And early on, in terms of, and this is also a little bit about coming out of the Midwest, with a hot new product, trying to get it to market, there are certain kinds of business models that you go into, or maybe there's a certain level of ego where you say, we're just going to create the entire channel. This product is so awesome, we can build our entire distributorship, we can sell directly to end users, we'll come up with our own way to sell this, it'll be our own brand, we're going to go direct to the people who are going to be buying it. If you want corporate America to buy browsers for their desktop, then you have to have a corporate sales team that's going to go visit all of the Fortune 1000 to get there. We looked at that and said, well, maybe it's not our skill set, but then again, we also looked at it and said, maybe it's not anybody's skill set. You look at the market, and IBM, NEC, FTP Software, Microsoft Digital Equipment, and another half dozen medium-sized players were all distributing software in this space. So we, from the very start, took the indirect channel sales method. IBM and Digital Equipment were two of our earliest customers. And so once you pick that model, it's not quite that complete agonizing decision to license to Microsoft. In fact, Microsoft was the pinnacle of the software model that we had picked, which is go get the best distribution. We knew Netscape was coming on fast. We knew they were starting to give it away and attract the attention and do the direct, we can do it ourselves, raise $20 million. We raised $0 to do Mosaic. Because we cut some deals with IBM Digital Equipment and we grew the company out of revenues. So Microsoft was the pinnacle. How do you handle when so many of these other players are coming into the market quickly? Well, you go latch on to the biggest channel you can find and make the best deal you can, and it worked great.
Thanks, Tim. We're going to leave a couple minutes for questions, and so I'd like each one of you just, you have entrepreneurs in the audience here, and what is your advice to entrepreneurs today? If we just go in order here, Bill, do you want to start?
Wow, that's a big, broad question. What's advice to entrepreneurs? Well, I think, the first thing I would say is that it's a good idea to do something that you know something about. The second thought that I have is that it's good to do it with somebody. I know there are a lot of people that, go out and do things independently. I liked having somebody to do it with. I think, particularly as you run into difficult times, it's good to have somebody there with you. I heard somebody had problems with a partner. That happens too. But I think that for me, it's more fun to celebrate with somebody when you have a victory. It's better to have somebody that is there with you in difficult times. So, as tough as partners are, I like having them. And I think that I would say thinking different than the rest of the market. I like any kind of niche approach to the market. I like zagging when the market is zigging. Generally speaking, I think just being copying everybody else as a business plan doesn't sound very smart to me. Those would be my quick thoughts.
That's great, Jim.
I would say, first of all, learn from your mistakes. It's human nature to bury them, but dissect them, analyze them, focus on them, learn from them. You'll make them, everybody makes them, learn from them. You'll be better for doing that. And this is something that's in the book. Always have a hot standby for whatever you do. If you think you have the best investor, work harder to get more investor proposals. If you think you have the best lender, work hard to get more banks that you're talking to. If you think you're hiring the best person for a job, work harder to get more candidates to look at. Always have hot standbys. The person with the most choices will win in any situation. Make more choices for yourself. It's a pattern you can spread through everything that you do in life, and it will take you much farther than you think.
The story is in the book, actually, of how that played out for you. I don't know if we want to go through the whole story, but you needed a hot standby.
If you're up for it. I was raising money for, this was company number one, failure number one. And Arthur Levitt, this is not in the book, Arthur Levitt was my investor. Arthur was the chairman of the American...
We didn't, yes, correct. Just if there are any lawyers in the house, there are probably some lawyers in the house here. His name is not in the book.
Arthur and I have history. So Arthur was then the head of the American Stock Exchange, later on ran the SEC, has a pretty stellar career on Wall Street of his own before he went to public service. Arthur and I really clicked up with something, and he had invested in some media properties. He owned Roll Call, he owned 2 or 3 minor properties, and he and I clicked, and he was going to invest in my company. And it was the best sort of encounter I'd ever had with any investor. We actually hugged each other in his office, and there was sunlight streaming through the windows, and we were going to build this great company together. Just going to be fantastic, and I almost skipped on the way out. Called my wife and said, "You won't believe the partner I've got." And so I spent the next few weeks getting the deal done, getting everything put together, getting the bank financing, and not long before the closing, Arthur's bankers called my bankers to say, "Jim wants this deal more than Arthur wants the deal, so here's Jim's new deal." And it was less equity, and it was a PIK form, so I would be diluted down to nothing. If
that was the day of the
wrong.
closing, right?
This was hours before. And this was like a 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning call, and they said, "You have until noon." Fortunately, my bankers, and especially Janet Muir, who was the lead banker on this project, had hot standbys. Janet had insisted that we keep on talking to other people, even though we had signed up with Arthur. And we did have 3 hot standbys, all of whom wanted to do this deal. We quickly signed up Spectrum Equity Partners from Boston. They were the partner we went forward with. Never called Arthur back, at least not then. Later on I did for something else. So we had a hot standby. So I was able to do what I wanted to do. Thank God we had a hot standby. And it was Janet's insistence that we not stop working on developing hot standbys. So in my company now, everything we do, we insist on having hot standbys for everything. And it makes life so much better.
Thanks, Jim. Tim, how about you?
I think I'll mention, talking about the partners you work with, it was alluded to before. Partners come in all ranges across doing business. The vendor kind of companies that you work closely with, your channel, and then the direct partners that you work with inside the building. And they're valuable and also can drag you down in ways that you absolutely do not expect going in. And I'm not sure I have a prescription on how to solve all of these things, but if you're not paying attention to the partners you're selecting, the partners you're working with, how they're treating you. If the person is not nice to the waiter or waitress, they're probably not going to be nice to do business with or even trustworthy. Starting with sort of an initial partner when we started Spyglass, even before the networking software, that was just crazy enough to talk us into it, and you often worried what his value was to the company along the way, but he was the glue that held everything together and turned out to be definitely the right partner for the right time. To other sources of capital that, and including one I sold out to, turned around and cut the contract right before it was supposed to pay, you can get the feeling that nothing good's ever going to come out of this partnership, even though it looks all great on paper or you think you have all the bases covered. They'll find a way to get you. They'll find a way to, to make it bad. And then when you have the right partner, and people talk down VCs, and there are some VCs who are the wrong partners, but ours were absolutely terrific, and we never would have bet the company on Mosaic if it weren't for our VC backers at Spyglass, Greylock and Venrock. So when we had the right partners, that's what led to the good luck. That's what led to making the good decisions.
Thanks, Tim.